All right. Hello, everybody. I'm just jumping in quickly today um, to talk about an article that I came across on the internet, as we all do, on the topic of how women or people who menstruate are ditching the pill in favor of more natural options. And if you've been around for long enough, you know that these kinds of articles can be really confusing for people who are new to the symptothermal method or people who are new to the world of fertility awareness-based methods, because they tend to blend fact and faction, fact and fiction, which makes it quite difficult for someone who doesn't have a lot of knowledge on the subject to discern what's real and what's not real, or what's factual and what is not. So I thought this would be a great example for us to go through. I am going to share my screen and we're going to start taking a look at it. So bear with me. All right. I think we have our screen here. And hopefully you can still see me. Now, this article is from the Daily Mail, which, as we all know, well, it's not the most reliable news source, but we're going to look past that for a moment, because I am glad to see that they are actually talking about this. So the title goes, "Death of the Pill. The number of women relying on natural family planning apps to avoid pregnancy doubles in a decade amid celeb and social media inspired trend to ditch hormonal contraception." So let's scroll down and just start having a look. Now, first off, I do want to say that in terms of looking at the positives, it is fantastic to see that people in Britain, I mean, these statistics are from the NHS, so they're mostly from Britain, but at least to see that people are realizing that they do have other options other than being on the pill. So people that might have otherwise soldiered through some really uncomfortable side effects, such as weight gain, acne, mental health concerns, depression, all that sort of thing. People like that are suddenly realizing that they actually do have other options that can be effective at pregnancy prevention. So that's fantastic, especially the fact that the rate of people choosing natural methods has actually jumped. It's doubled in a decade. So that's fantastic to see. But let's dive in. So first off, we've got this sentence here: "Thousands of British women have ditched the pill in favor of a celebrity-inspired natural contraceptive trend," official figures suggest. And I really want to talk about that just briefly, because I don't know about you, but to me, it almost has a negative connotation, the fact that it's celebrity inspired. And it actually makes me a little bit angry, because when I see that, all that I can think of is the fact that these women and people who menstruate probably never even knew that natural options were available to them until they logged on to, say, Instagram and saw the latest Love Island celebrity talking about an app like Natural Cycles. And for those people, I would ask the question, why haven't they heard about this when they're in the doctor's office, when they're in the gynecologist's office? Can we blame people for being inspired by celebrities if it's simply the fact that they're not hearing about their options from the people, the healthcare providers who are supposed to be telling them about their options? So I feel as though there's a little bit of a negative connotation there, but in my opinion, the negative connotation should really be the fact that people aren't finding out about their options until they're logging onto Instagram to a celebrity account or an Instagram influencer. And speaking of the word Instagram influencer, I also want to bring up the fact that we seem to have a negative connotation against Instagram influencers. And I feel, this is just my personal feeling, that a lot of Instagram influencers are women, and a lot of them are utilizing their body and their sensuality to sell products and make an income. And I feel as though it seems that society is okay with using women's bodies and women's sexuality to sell products when it's on a billboard on the main street of town. But for some reason, our society is not okay with women and mothers using their bodies or their brains or whatever it is to sell a product on their own steam and make their own income from it. So I feel like there's some massive double standards there that are already in just the first few paragraphs laying the scene for what I believe can be a bit of a bias against information from people on social media. So that said, let's continue reading through. So we're going to scroll down a little bit here, and we've got this sentence here. Dozens of celebrities, including Love Island's Olivia Atwood and Montana Brown, have raved about the benefits of using apps such as Natural Cycles and hailed them the golden ticket. So I'm just going to say, I hate this so much. I hate this. And the reason that I hate this is that these articles always make it seem as though the Natural Cycles app or devices such as the Daisy device or period tracking apps like Clue, that sort of thing, they always seem to really focus on apps. And what it does is it makes people who read these articles feel as though natural contraception is all about using an app, when in reality, the truth could not be further from that. So in reality, bear with me, just trying to read text while I'm doing this as well. So in reality, the world of fertility awareness-based methods is large, it's varied. The term fertility awareness-based methods, or FABMs for short, is an umbrella term. There are many different types of fertility monitoring methods that fall under that umbrella. Using apps like Natural Cycles is just one approach, and it's not the most effective approach, and it's not an approach that I ever recommend. So if you're not familiar with this, I have a lot of resources on my website where you can read more, but just as a very, very basic overview, apps like Natural Cycles want you to take your temperature in the morning, and then they want you to input that temperature into the app, and the app is going to give a prediction of whether you are fertile or infertile on that day. Now, the problem with this is that your temperature, when you take your temperature, when you wake up in the morning, that is not a predictive biomarker of your fertility, because our temperature only shows a sustained rise after we've already ovulated. So it doesn't give us any warning that ovulation might be approaching. So what that means is that apps like Natural Cycles, they actually use their algorithm to give you a prediction based on your past cycles and the cycles of other people in their algorithm to give you a prediction as to when ovulation might occur. And the problem with that is that if we're relying on predictions, we open ourselves up to the errors that can happen when real life occurs, where human beings, most of us are going to experience irregular cycles at some point. The myth of that 28-day perfect cycle is just that. It's a myth. Very few people actually experience a normal 28-day menstrual cycle. So if you're relying on a prediction, but you're out in the real world with cycles that are not textbook 28-day menstrual cycles, you're putting yourself at risk of an unplanned pregnancy. And so I do not ever recommend the Natural Cycles app for people. There are some people who it might work well for, and I actually do talk about that on my website. So there is some nuance, but overall, generally speaking, I don't recommend these apps. So when I log on to, articles like this about natural birth control, and they tend to put all the focus on app-based contraception, it's deeply disappointing because it's actually resulting in misconceptions. So the public is reading these and believing that everyone who uses natural birth control is using an app, and an app that's bringing with it risks of inaccuracy and unplanned pregnancy. So I really do hate that little sentence there. I hate it, and here I am to say that. I know we shouldn't say hate, but that's how I feel. So let's move on. Let's have a look. This next little sentence here. Social media is also littered with videos from influencers highlighting the supposed benefits of binning traditional contraception as part of the Back to Nature movement. They claim hormonal forms of contraception like the pill have left them feeling ugly by causing weight gain, acne, and depression. There's so much to unpack here. So first off, we've got language like littered and supposed benefits and binning traditional contraception. And it really sounds to me like it was written by some kind of bitter pharmaceutical pill scientist in a back room somewhere who's like looking at the statistics and lamenting the decline of popularity of the pill. That's how it reads to me. But what I have to say is that the language here is framing the decision to come off hormonal birth control as a vanity decision. So you'll read there that they're saying that these influencers felt ugly on hormonal birth control, as if all influencers care about is looking good. And reading that, I just want to say, I'm sorry, but did you miss the part where acne can actually be extremely painful? Did you miss the part where depression can actually heavily impact your entire life, your relationships, your career, your joy? Did they miss the part where weight gain can also be linked to negative health outcomes? I'm reading that sentence and I'm feeling as though it's being framed to make Instagram influencers choice to get off the pill as being all about what they look like, when really, when you read about those symptoms that people can experience, there's plenty of evidence of the pill and other forms of hormonal contraception causing a wide range of side effects, whether they are benign and just a little bit annoying, perhaps like spotting, abnormal bleeding, weight gain, acne, that sort of thing, right through to things that are a lot more serious, where you've got mental health decline and depression, right through to suicidal ideation and actual suicide. And then you've got the other risks where we're talking about things like blood clots and increased risks of cancer, all that sort of thing. There is plenty of evidence that coming off the pill is actually beneficial to your health. So to frame it as being a vanity decision about these people just being concerned about what they look like is irresponsible, in my opinion, and it's extremely biased reporting in this article. All right, let's move on. Now, next up, I'm going to scroll down a little bit to find this next little piece that I wanted to chat about. Actually, maybe it's up here. Maybe I've missed it. This article is actually quite long. Here we go. All right. So we've got this here. Natural family planning is often done via an app that requires women to report their temperature most days. Some also ask about changes to cervical mucus and the length of menstrual cycle. Apps then use an algorithm to calculate their fertility. Natural Cycles, Flow, and Clue are among the most popular apps. Now, again, we've already spoken about this, but the article is really making it seem as though you're going to be using an app and it's going to predict your fertile days if you choose to use natural family planning as contraception. And this really couldn't be further from the truth. So the truth is that Symptothermal users are tracking their cervical mucus and their basal body temperature. They're optionally also tracking changes in their cervix as well. And they're recording these symptoms on either a paper chart or an app like the Read Your Body app. I'll actually link Read Your Body in the caption. But if they're using apps to record anything, they're using them simply as a digital paper chart. They're not utilizing any predictive value whatsoever from an app. Basically, when we use the Symptothermal method, we interpret the charts ourselves using the rules of the method that we've learned. And when we do that, we are getting real-time indicators of our fertility status every day. So at the end of every day, we can look at our chart and we can say, am I fertile today? And the answer is either yes or no. And that is based on real-time data, not predictions. So I just wanted to raise that. Now, in another area of the article, they actually do bring up, where is it? Natural family planning is often done via an app like Natural Cycles, Flow, or Clue, but you can also use fertility charts to record and track your measurements over the course of each menstrual cycle. The NHS says it can be up to 99% effective when done correctly and around 75% if not used according to instructions. So I'm glad that they've finally mentioned that you don't actually have to rely on app predictions if you want to manage your fertility naturally. However, they've actually said that it's 75% if not used according to instructions. So they're referring to typical use effectiveness there. And what they've failed to mention is that, number one, that figure of approximately 75% is outdated. So the most recent updated statistic, as far as I'm aware, it may have recently changed, but I haven't been able to double check, but the most recently updated statistic that I am aware of has this estimate at 85% effectiveness for all fertility awareness-based methods, the typical use rate. However, even that updated 85% effectiveness rate, what they fail to mention is that it's actually quite irrelevant, or possibly irrelevant, to individual types of FABMs like the Symptothermal method. And the reason for that is that it's calculated via what's known as the US Survey of National Family Growth. And that's like a big survey of a whole lot of different people, but there's not enough respondents for individual types of FABMs for them to generate statistically valid estimates for individual FABMs like the Symptothermal method. So they have to group together all different types of individual fertility awareness-based methods into one big group, and they get a big overarching typical use rate for all of those different FABMs. So we can already see how that might be a problem, but it's confirmed even further to definitely be a problem because over 80% of respondents who say that they were using an FABM were actually using self-reported rhythm method. Now, if you know anything about the rhythm method, it's a very old and outdated method that relies on counting days on a calendar, and it's not a very highly effective method. It's not a modern FABM, and it's not recommended for the vast majority of people because you really need to have perfectly regular cycles to have good success with it. So it is no wonder that that typical use effectiveness rate is relatively low at 85% because it's likely being skewed downward by large numbers of people using the rhythm method. So that figure of 85% is relatively irrelevant when we look at individual FABMs like the Symptothermal method. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. If we actually scroll all the way down, like way down, see if I can find it. There's so much. It's just like a lot of quotes from influencers, that sort of thing. BPAS puts the fertility awareness method, which is similar to the idea behind natural cycles, at around a 15% chance of failure. So they're actually using that updated 85% effectiveness rate, but they're still not explaining that it doesn't have much relevance for individual fertility awareness-based methods like the Symptothermal method. So that is an issue. And look, the entire article, in my opinion, is full of a lot of these kinds of errors or contradictions that make it difficult for people to understand if they don't know much about it. I really think that the main takeaway is that we need to get better at reporting on what people's options actually are if they would like to explore natural birth control. And the reality is that there's an umbrella of FABMs, that's an umbrella term, and there's a range of different methods available for people to use. So the Symptothermal method, which is what I use and what I teach, is proven highly effective, up to 99.6% in clinical trials, and that involves tracking cervical mucus and basal body temperature, and optionally the cervix. And then you've got methods such as cervical mucus only methods. So that's things like the Billings ovulation method or the Creighton method, and they just utilize cervical mucus tracking. And then you've got methods that are symptohormonal methods. So those are methods like the FEM method, the Marquette method, the Boston cross-check method. Those are utilizing urinary hormone metabolite testing, and also sometimes cervical mucus testing as well, to prevent pregnancy naturally, with great effectiveness again. And then you've also got these temperature only methods, which really is more so what apps like Natural Cycles fall under, where they're just relying on temperature alone. And again, the downfall of that is that, as you can see behind me, temperature really only rises after ovulation has already occurred. So in the lead up to ovulation, your temperature is giving you no indication that ovulation is about to happen. So that can be a downfall of those apps and devices. So there's a huge range of options to choose from. And when we log into articles like this, we're not being told about all those options. Instead, it's almost like we're getting like slapped over the face with a wet fish, and that wet fish is the Natural Cycles app. And to be frank, I'm kind of over it. It's been like 7 years of reading these articles and seeing this stuff. Anyway, I hope that's helpful for people who are reading along. and just feel like listening into a breakdown of a news article, feel free to pop questions into the comments section and I'll jump in if I can and answer questions. In the meantime, if you are interested in natural pregnancy prevention with high effectiveness, then head to my website. I have a free e-course, and I think that's the best place to begin to start learning about what the symptothermal method is and if it's right for you. And hopefully it is, because if it is, it can be life-changing. Anyway, I am signing off. I'm going to spray some nice little aromatherapy. I need that after reading this article, and I will see you next time. Bye.